Hello everyone, back to the third summer 2019 update from Gazobbies.com. So I've done 2 updates so far. I think they've been quite interesting updates as well, focusing on summers following mild and dry or dryish winters, and also summers following very mild and quite dry Februaries. So this third update though is going to be having a look at the QBO, the quasi-biennial oscillation. We are in the ascending but developing westerly phase of the QBO, and we're going to be looking at summers that coincide with developing or strengthening westerly QBO. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to pick up where we left off last week to begin the video. So there's a bit of a mistake in last week's video. I left a couple of years out, and I want to focus on that to begin with. So before I get on with that, though, just say that coming up later on today, we're going to have the Gazobbies Sunny Roundup, as always on a Sunday. We'll be having the Gazobbies Sunny Roundup, and also we're going to have the ECMWF and Metro France seasonal model update as well. That'll be with you around 3-4 o'clock this afternoon. And this video is going to be quite a long video, as always, with the long range stuff. So if you can't watch it all in one go, don't worry, the video will be kept on Gazobbies indefinitely. It'll be placed on the summer updates page later on today, with an extensive written summary going over everything we discuss in the video. And that'll probably be around 7-8 o'clock this evening. Big thank you to our Analogues guru, James Ackrill, for getting all of the analogues together. So, again, couldn't do these long-range updates without James's input. I haven't got time to go through the analogues myself, so big thank you to James for doing that. And without anything else to say, let's get on with it. And when I said we're going to pick up where we left off last week. So last week we was looking at summers following winters with very mild CTs of 5.2 degrees or more, and also with an England and Wales precipitation of less than 250 millimetres. Now, 250 millimetres sounds like quite a wet, quite a lot of rain, but of course it's over a full winter, and that's actually quite a dry winter. What we found is that these summers actually tend to have an anticyclonic signal. So this is the all Junes combined chart. The years within this are starting at 1863, or were starting at 1863, as we looked at this last week, and going all the way down to 2005. So there was a big range of years. But what we did see is that we tend to have quite an anticyclonic signal for these summers, with above average heights both over and to the east and northeast of the country. That's how all the Junes look, with high pressure, as say, through the country and up to the east and the northeast. Now, this is how the Julys look. Again, quite an anticyclonic signal. The position of the high pressure does change a bit in July. It tends to be more out to the west of the UK, but generally it's another fairly anticyclonic looking signal for the Julys. The August look like they try to get a bit more unsettled, but still with a bit of an anticyclonic signal actually to our east. These areas of low pressure look like they're generally still rather diverted and stuck out to both the west and the east of us. So we're still more or less within a ridge of high pressure with these summers. And the summers overall, this is how the summers combined were shaping up last week, with these summers following mild and relatively dry winters. And we see that they tend to have an area of high pressure close to the country. Now, there was a mistake. I did make a mistake in the video that I did last week. And it was noted in the comments at YouTube. A few people noticed that when we went through the individual years that are making up these analogues, we missed out 2 summers. We missed out the summer of 1975, and we missed out the summer of 1976. 1976 is the daddy of hot summers, of course, and I always like to take the opportunity to show the daddy. So here we go, starting off with 1975. This is how summer of 1975 was looking, a strong anticyclonic signal there. high pressure dominating. It was a very dry and hot summer in 1975, even though it started off with snow at the beginning of June. Overall, the summer was very hot and very dry. And then, of course, we have the daddy. This is the daddy of hot summers. 1976, the great drought summer of 1976. The reason it was such a hot and dry summer is it has a large blocking area of high pressure centred over the top of the UK. The low pressure in the daddy of hot summers is penned out to the west. The jet stream is going like that. So we're hot, we're dry, we're anticyclonic in the summer of 1976. And of course, those two summers did make up part of that analogues package that we was looking at last week, with summers following winters that are generally mild and dry. So I wanted to just begin by making up for that little error that happened last week. I'm not sure how it happened. James did send the analogues through. Any mistakes, I should say, as we do these, any mistakes that occur either with the naming of years or with years not being included, anything that goes wrong is always entirely my fault. It's not James's fault. James sends the analogues through to me. I checked the email. Those 2 years, 75 and 76, were included within the analogues that James emailed to me. And I just, for some reason, didn't upload them when I did the video, so they got missed out. That is purely an error on my part, so anything that goes wrong, as I say, it's always entirely my fault. It's not James's at all. James sends the analogues through, and it's down to me what happens after that. So I wanted to include those 2 years because I know a few people did miss out on them last week. And there we go, you've seen the daddy of hot summers. Right, so let's get on with the third summer 2019 analogues update. Let's say it's going to be a QBO special from this point on. So James has sent this chart through to us. This is depicting all QBOs going back to 1948. Now, the early part of this is unreliable. So you'll notice all these blue coloured numbers here from 1948 going down towards 1953. It looks like we're just in a continuous easterly QBO, and I don't think that's right. That's what the data says at NOAA. But I don't think that's quite right. So really the reliable QBO begins around 1953, 1954. So what you're looking at here is each individual month's QBO number. We've got these blue numbers, for example, in 1954, have these deepening blue numbers through most of the year. That is an easterly QBO. And actually, most of 1954 saw a strengthening easterly QBO signal. Conversely, red on this chart is the westerly QBO. So, for example, in 1955, you'll see we begin the year in an easterly QBO, albeit rapidly weakening. We go into a westerly QBO through the spring of 1955. That continues to strengthen through the summer of 1955, reaching its peak through the autumn of 1955, before then waxing away and returning to the easterly QBO in the year of 1956. So early 1956, we just have a weak easterly QBO, and then the QBO strengthens, the easterly QBO I should say, strengthens as we go through the summer and into the autumn. Primarily into the autumn we go into strengthening easterly QBO. So blue is easterly QBO, red is westerly QBO. Remember, the quasi-biennial oscillation is just an index that's reflecting the strength of the zone of westerlies in the northern hemisphere. When you're in the westerly phase of the QBO, the zone of westerlies are strengthened. When you're in an easterly phase of the QBO, the zone of westerlies are weakened. It's primarily something that we look at for winter forecasting. So when you're in a westerly QBO in the winter, it's a signal to be strengthening the zone of westerlies and possibly having a milder winter. But when you're in an easterly QBO in the winter, it's a signal to be weakening the zone of westerlies and possibly having a colder, more block type winter. But it's not quite straightforward as that. But it is something that we look at through all the other seasons as well. It is something that we have to factor in for all the other seasons too. Right, scrolling down through the years, we come down to the current couple of years, so that's 2018 just there, that's 2019 just there, you'll see that most of 2018, certainly the first half of the year up to the summer, we have a strengthening easterly QBO. Becomes very, very strong with this easterly QBO through the summer. Then as we go through into the autumn, the easterly QBO fades away, and through the end of the year, it's kind of like November, December, we go into the westerly phase quite rapidly as well, into the westerly phase of the QBO. And that takes us into where we are right now. We are in a developing, strengthening westerly QBO at the moment, and this developing and strengthening westerly QBO is going to carry on through the spring and into the summer. I suspect it'll reach its peak probably somewhere around August or September, and then it'll start to fade away through the autumn, and by the time you get through to next winter, I think we'll begin to transition into the easy QBO. But this summer, getting back to the summer updates, what we need to look at for this summer is developing, strengthening westerly QBO summer. So if we go back to that year just looking at, actually 1955, that's a perfect example of what we're talking about here. So again, we start 1955 with a weak easterly QBO. It reverses to a westerly QBO through March, April, May. And it starts to strengthen, albeit very slowly actually for this year, but it does start to strengthen through the summer and into the autumn. Though it is a very weak westerly QBO in 1955. So let's start having a look at the years that were developing or strengthening westerly QBOs. Now we can only go back to 1950s with this, so our batch of analogues are going to be relatively limited compared to what we normally do, going back into the early 20th century, and even in some instances going into the 1800s, into the 19th century. So our first strengthening westerly QBO summer is that summer we were just looking at, 1955. So the summer of 1955 has this big area of above average heights centred over the top of the UK, and therefore it's a dry and a hot summer overall, very similar in some ways to the pattern of 1976, although it isn't quite as hot or as dry as the summer of 1976. Nevertheless, that's the kind of pattern that we get when we do have our hottest and driest summer. So the first strengthening, developing westerly QBO is a dry, hot summer in 1955. The next summer is 1961. That shows an ascending westerly QBO through the summer. So this one has above average heights out to our west, below average heights up to the north and the northeast. We bring the flow in from a northwesterly direction, so it looks like it's probably quite an unsettled and relatively cool summer in 1961. 1969 looks pretty decent though, so there aren't many good summers in the 1960s. It is a notorious decade, the 1960s, for both cold winters but also for really, really grim summers. But the summer of 1969 actually wasn't too bad at all. This one, again, with high pressure centred over the UK, through the UK and up to Scandinavia as well, so we tend to be breathing in quite a lot of warm, or even at times maybe quite hot east winds. I mean, it wasn't anything particularly spectacular, certainly not by modern day standards, but for a 1960s summer, the developing, strengthening westerly QBO summer of 1969 wasn't too bad at all. 1971 is our next summer with a developing westerly QBO. This one has above average heights to our north and northwest, and then it has below average heights to our south. So I think this one's probably quite cool but relatively dry in the summer of 1971. Not much going on. Those early 1970s summers were very, very quiet indeed, without very much happening at all, although of course things did get much more exciting in the middle and second half of the 1970s. The next summer with a developing westerly QBO is 1973. This one has above average heights through the country, so it looks probably quite a dry summer, below average heights up to the north. I think it's again another fairly quiet, fairly dry, nondescript type summer, not much happening, not much of interest, but again not particularly bad summer, you have to say. It does show an anticyclonic signal. This is our first really poor summer. This is 1978. The summer of 1978 was a developing westerly QBO summer. And this one has quite a blocking signal out to the north and to the northwest of us, with low pressure to the south and southeast. This forces the winds into the northeast. So it's a cool and wet summer in 1978. Very poor summer indeed in 1978. And another grim summer in 1980. So again, we've got another strengthening westerly QBO summer here, and this one is pretty grim. It has a blocking signal up to the north, the summer of 1980, and then below average heights to the south, and we're bringing in these very cool east or northeasterly winds. That's not a very good summer at all in 1980. Cold and wet over, I think it's particularly grim in August 1980. And another one, look at this, it's 1985, the summer of 1985 is very, very poor for this developing westerly QBO summer. It has a big trough of low pressure centered over the top of the country. It's just a very cold and very, very wet summer indeed. Not very good summer at all. But then things get a bit better. We go through to the summer of 1990. Now, actually, the reanalysis is one of those strange summers where the reanalysis, you would look at it and think it's probably quite a grim summer indeed, because it has below average heights out to the north and west of us, above average heights down to our southwest. And you will think it's probably quite a westerly sort of summer. This blocking feature just here gives the game away, because that shows that there was a large blocking feature to our northeast. Well, actually, remember, this is an anomaly for a whole summer. So what happens with this summer is that June 1990 is a very poor month. It's a very poor summer month, unsettled, cool, wet. But then the summer gets rapidly better through July and August. We go into a prolonged spell of hot weather, culminating in a really hot start to August 1990. So that's one of those examples where a 3-monthly reanalysis is not necessarily telling you the whole story about the summer. And overall, the summer of 1990, despite the poor June, is remembered as a hot summer. And then our next summer is a classic. This is 1995, coinciding with a strengthening westerly QBO. Look at this again, very similar pattern in a lot of ways to both 1955 but also to 1976. This one with low pressure blocked out in the Atlantic, big area of high pressure centered over top of the UK and bringing in these hot easterly winds. It's a proper drought summer. Actually, it's a drier summer in 1995 compared to 1976, but it's not quite as hot as 1976. Nevertheless, the summer of 1995 is probably the best summer of my lifetime. I just missed 1976. I was a year too late being born. But 1995, I think, in terms of consistently hot and dry weather, probably the best summer of my lifetime. And we've got another good summer. Look at this, it's 1997. So all of a sudden, these strengthening and developing westerly QBO summers are getting a lot better as we've hit the 1990s. So this is another classic. This one has high pressure up over Scandinavia with low pressure to the south of the country, and we're bringing in hot easterly winds. It's relatively cool and unsettled in June, but by August, it gets very, very hot, but also very thundering. 1999 is another decent 1990s summer, this one with above average heights to our north and also to our east. It has a pretty hot July, although August turns quite unsettled. Then we've got the summer of 2002. So this one is a more unsettled summer. It's a very warm, humid summer, but it is more unsettled. It has below average heights out to the west of us, doing something like that. Notice this blocking feature, though, over Scandinavia. That's pumping in regular, warm, southerly to southeast winds. So it's a very warm summer in 2002, but also quite unsettled. 2004 is a bizarre summer. So it has has quite a strong blocking signal up to the north, so there is a lot of northern blocking. This area of low pressure in the Atlantic is connected to an active hurricane season. So the hurricanes are developing in the Caribbean and then doing some, or in the tropical Atlantic, moving into the Caribbean and then doing something a bit like that. So it turns out that it's a very warm summer. It's particularly warm in August, but it's also exceptionally wet, including the Boscastle flood, of course. It has sort of a tropical type feel in August 2004, with consistent heat, but also, and consistent humidity, but also extremely wet, with active storms and deep areas of low pressure bringing copious amounts of rain within this very sort of humid, unstable atmosphere. Very, very bizarre summer in 2004. And then the next summer, look at this, it's 2006 with a strengthening westerly QBO summer. This one, again, it's a hot summer, has a blocking pattern over Scandinavia and also through the UK and out into the Atlantic. Jet streams pushed up there. Does deteriorate a bit in August of 2006, but June and July are classic hot months. And then finally, for our strengthening, ascending, developing westerly QBO summers, we've got 2013. The last time we had a strengthening westerly QBO in the summer was 2013, and this is another pretty warm summer, especially hot in July. Has a CET above 18 degrees, so any summer month that has a CET at or above 18 degrees will be regarded as a classic hot summer month. July 2013 is regarded as a classic hot summer month. Overall, this is a very warm summer. June is quite cool, but it does get really hot indeed as we get through to July 2013. So quite an interesting package of analogues. Let's see how all this shapes up when we combine all of these years. So for June, when we have this developing westerly QBO, June tends to be unsettled. It tends to have an area of below average heights through the UK and across much of Western Europe too. The jet stream tends to be doing something a little bit like that. So obviously June looks like it shapes up to be quite an unsettled start to the summer when you combine these years. But look what happens when you get through to July. It's a complete change. These Julys with a strengthening westerly QBO favour an area of high pressure above average heights to be centred through the UK and up to Northern Europe too. Obviously a much more anticyclonic signal. You would expect a warm and dry month to be signal there. But then look what happens when you get through to August. If anything, the high pressure signal strengthens further in August during these developing westerly QBO summers. Tends to be centred over Scandinavia. Notice the below average heights across southeastern parts of Europe. So that's where the trough is. The trough is in the southeast of Europe. We're close to the ridge and we'd be pulling in generally. Obviously there will be years that are deviating here. We know, for example, 1985 is included, which is a very poor summer and a very poor August. But overall, this favours bringing in hot easterly winds in August with these developing westerly QBO summers. So it does appear that developing westerly QBO is actually a signal for quite a decent summer. This is how the summers themselves are looking when we put them all together. So all of those summer months and individual summers brought together look like this. When you've got a developing westerly QBO, you favour a ridge through the summer over Scandinavia. You favour a trough of low pressure across southern and eastern parts of Europe. You favour bringing in increasingly warm or hot easterly winds. So certainly this package of analogues really is very, very interesting indeed, and it is favouring the chance of a hot summer here, and particularly a summer that gets hotter as it goes along. So it starts off maybe a bit dodgy in June, but by the time you get through to July and particularly August, it does look as though you're favouring hot conditions when you just purely look at a developing or a strengthening westerly QBO. Now, what about if you combine this with the winter data? So let's finally start looking at winter data combined with Westerly QBO. So this chart is for a developing Westerly QBO following a mild winter with a CET of 5.2 degrees or more. So this narrows down the package of analogues a lot. The years we have here are 1990, 1995, 1999, 2002, and this is how the Junes of those 4 years are looking. It accentuates the unsettled pattern in the Junes, which you would expect, particularly as 1990 is included in this batch of analogues. So for the Junes, you're favouring unsettled and potentially quite cool conditions. But look what happens when you get through to the Julys of these 4 years. Remember, this is looking at the developing, strengthening Westerly QBO, but combined, so narrowing it down, if you like, narrowing the package of analogues down, combined with the mild winter with a CET of 5.2 or more. And in July, it accentuates the high pressure. It accentuates the above average heights over the UK, much of Central Europe, with low pressure up to the north and the jet stream push northwards up there as well. And what about August? Well, look at that for August. It looks like we potentially favour a classic summer month here when we are in a developing Westerly QBO, and we combine that with a mild winter with a CET above 5.2. For August, we actually favour a very strong blocking signal to be just over the country, slightly to our northeast, which does favour bringing in those hot easterly winds. So a hot and dry August would overall, there wouldn't be a guarantee, but overall it does favour a hot and dry August. If you look at the summers themselves, this is what you come up with: a very anticyclonic signal with above average heights, just covering most of northern Europe. The UK is included in that. Obviously, quite a hot signal, bringing the wind in from off the continent. So this is a very, very interesting update, I'm sure you'll agree. The last thing we can look at to narrow things down further is a developing Westerly QBO following, and also developing Westerly QBO summer that also combines the mild winter with a CET above 5.2, but also a dry winter as well. So this is adding another factor in to narrow the field down even further. And the only year we can come out with then is 2002. So just to finish off, this is how the summer of 2002 shapes up. It's unsettled in June with below average heights out to the west, above average heights across central parts of Europe. So it's quite an unsettled June in 2002. July also looks quite unsettled with below average heights through the country. But it is a pretty hot spell. It's a pretty hot spell in late July 2002. August 2002 looks a lot better. It has that strong Scandinavian high up to our northeast. It brings in warm, maybe even at times quite hot east winds. It's a very humid month in August 2002. The overall winter analysis, we saw this earlier on. Of course, when just looking at the QBO on its own, the summer of 2002 has below average heights through the country. It probably looks worse than it is. It's not a bad summer at all, really, in 2002. It's not a classic, but it's not a bad summer. It's a very warm summer. It's a very humid summer. It is quite unsettled at times, but overall, we have had far, far worse summers than the summer of 2002. However, I think this is a really interesting package of analogues that we're looking at here. It does appear that the developing and strengthening Westerly QBO is very much favouring, particularly in the more recent years, I have to add, from 1990 onwards, very much favouring a really decent summer here, potentially a hot summer, and particularly so for August. Could it be that we're going to have our first hot August for a very long time? I think it's back to 2003, the last time we had an August CET above 18 degrees. It's a long time coming if it happens, but certainly that's kind of the way these developing Westerly QBO summers are edging here. Now, we can't look at this on its own, obviously, so, I mean, this is a really interesting Analogues update, but we have got to be cautious with this. I think we need to combine this, obviously, with all the other data that we're going to look at. Very shortly, we're going to start looking at what's happened in March, so I assume we'll be looking at very mild Marches and the summers that follow those, and also we'll have to nail down where we are with precipitation as well for this March. So that'll probably be the next one we're going to look at, but also very shortly we're going to look at solar activity and ENSO as well. So in isolation, I don't think we can take this developing Westerly QBO summer pattern too literally, but certainly it's a really interesting analog update this month, and there's a very strong signal here. Sometimes we never get that strong a signal with some of these Analogues update, but this is a really, really strong signal for a dry and a warm summer, and particularly so late on, particularly in August. We do have a strong signal here for potentially a hot and dry August. Right, half an hour. This video will be placed on the summer updates forecast page later on today with a written summary going over everything that we discussed in the video. Not sure if I mentioned at the start of the update, but the summer forecast is penciled in for the 26th of May. I think that's when we're doing the summer forecast, Sunday, 26th of May. So this video will be placed on the summer updates and forecast page. There'll be a written summary that goes with it later on today. Come back, have a read of that, probably from around 7, 8 o'clock this evening. Later on today, we're going to have Gaz's study roundup. We'll also have the ECMWF and Meteo France seasonal model update. That's going to be quite an interesting watch. But half an hour, that's all for now. And thanks for watching.